Okay, guys, it's noon, so we're gonna go ahead and get started so we can make sure we can get through everything, hopefully in 30 minutes. My name is Olga Guadarrama, and I am the financial aid counselor in Student Financial Services. If you guys have any questions as we go through the presentation, please make sure that you guys send them through the chat, and then I'll be checking towards the end to see what your questions are so we can hopefully get a chance to respond to them. If we run out of time out of the 30 minutes, I'll still stay on and answer your questions if you're able to still stay on. And either way, this session is going to be recorded and it's going to be uploaded. So if you miss it, you can always come back and listen to the rest of it later. But this is basically going to be a presentation just giving you the basics about public service loan and also any of some changes that have occurred recently. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about a couple things today. Just quickly, the history of public service loan forgiveness. What are the requirements? What is a qualifying loan? What is qualifying employer? What is considered full-time employment? What is a qualifying repayment plan? And what is a qualifying monthly payment? Those are basically kind of like the 5 things that they ask you to be able to participate in this program. And then also, how do you keep track of public service loan forgiveness eligibility and PSLF in the news, and then a little bit about the future of public service loan forgiveness. Oh, I think we have somebody that can't hear. You may want to call in because I am not muted anymore. I think there's an option where you can call in if you can't hear because maybe you don't have a microphone or something on your laptop. So, oh, okay, good. It's working. Good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started now that you guys are hopefully all able to hear me now. So first, just a brief history of public service loan forgiveness. The program actually started back in 2007 under the College Cost Reduction and Access Act of 2007. So it's been in effect quite a bit, more than a decade. And any borrowers that met all of the requirements wouldn't have been eligible for any public service loan forgiveness until October of 2017 at the earliest, because of course you needed to make sure you were meeting all of the requirements for a minimum of 10 years. So if it started in 2007, at the earliest, you couldn't have gotten any forgiveness until 2017. So really it's only been, quite in effect, like a little bit over a decade, because now we're going, we just started 2022. So the public service loan forgiveness was designed to forgive the remaining balance of your federal direct loans tax-free after meeting all of the eligibility requirements and submitting all of the required paperwork. So you don't have to pay any taxes on the amount forgiven if you ever get public service loan forgiveness, which is very good because under forgiveness under some of the other things like income-driven repayment or that, you do have to pay taxes on the amount forgiven after that. So the basic requirements for PSLF is they're kind of simple, but first you have to make 120 qualifying monthly payments over the period of 10 years. So there's no way for you to like speed that up and pay it off in 5. It has to be a minimum of 10 years. You also have to have a qualifying repayment plan, which we'll discuss in some upcoming slides. You also have to have a qualifying direct loan, which we'll also talk about. And then you also have to be employed full-time, and I'll kind of explain what the requirements for that are too. And you do have to be employed by a qualifying employer, which we will always also talk about. First thing is, what is a qualifying loan? A qualifying loan is going to be either a direct subsidized loan, direct unsubsidized loan, a direct plus loan for parents or graduate or professional students, and a direct consolidated loan. These other loans that are down here, like the FEL, the Perkins, and the HPSL, you can have those kind of be counted towards public service loan forgiveness, but you do need to consolidate those in order to make them eligible, because those are federal student loans, but they're not automatically eligible for public service loan forgiveness unless you consolidate them. So you can always find the type of federal loan that you have by logging into studentaid.gov. And then it'll say right in the word right in front of the loan, it's going to say whether it's FEL or whether it's Perkins or whether it's direct. And then that's how you would know if it qualifies or not. It has to say pretty much direct in front of it in order for it to qualify. So some of the recent changes that just happened recently, I think it was October 6th of this year that they announced, is that for a limited time, you would be eligible to receive credit for past periods of repayment on loans that would have otherwise not counted towards PSLF. So if someone had Fell, Perkins, or other kind of federal student loans, they essentially what they can do is they can now consolidate them before October 31st, 2022, as long as they're working for a qualifying employer, and make their loans eligible to count basically and kind of like catch up. But you do have to make sure that you do consolidate them before that deadline of October 31st, 2022. Now, this is not really something that's very important for you guys because a lot of you guys are new borrowers. So you kind of probably already have direct loans. The direct loan program started since July 1st of 2010. So if you've only been borrowing federal student loans since about 10 years ago, then you basically all you have is pretty much direct loans. Any past periods of repayment are not going to count, now are going to count regardless of whether you made a payment on time, for the full amount due, or on a qualifying repayment plan, as long as basically you convert the unqualifying loans into qualifying loans before that October 31st, 2022 date by consolidating them into a direct consolidated loan. But like I said, this is mostly for old borrowers. The same thing still applies where periods of deferment or forbearance don't continue to count towards PSLF. And of course, for any person that's still trying to get PSLF due to these recent changes, the employment requirement has not changed. So you still have to be working full-time for a qualifying employer. So this is not really something that you guys, like I said, have to worry about, but it is a recent change that just happened on October 6th of this year that they announced. And it is very good news for very old borrowers that, you know, might feel like they didn't know certain something and then they just kind of just decided to not do anything about it. This gives them a chance to kind of go back, fix the error, and possibly get a lot of credit towards PSLF since a few years ago. And what is a qualifying employer? That's really important. That's like the one thing that they will not waive, even with this, you know, temporary waiver thing situation that they have going on. So for the qualifying employer, it does have to be a government organization that is federal, state, local, or tribal, or a non-for-profit tax exempt organization under section 501c3 of the IRS. As you can see, effective the last report that came out September of 2021, 64.6% of people trying to go into PSLF fall under the government organization section, and then 35.4 fall under the 501c3. No one really has fallen under just a non-for-profit organization that provides one or more public service. It basically is between these two things right here. And then also, it's very important to know that the employee is someone who is hired and paid by the employer. So if you're working at a location under a contract with your employer, the organization that hired and pays you must be the qualifying employer, not the organization where you perform the work. Because sometimes where you perform the work is not the place where that's actually hiring you. So it's your actual hiring, you know, employer that counts. Let me see if you guys sent a question here to see. Okay, so psychiatry resident employed by Rosalind Franklin University accepted into program after graduating med school in 2019. So RFU is a qualifying employer. If you work full-time for the university, it is considered a 501c3. So you should qualify as long as you have been making payments on your loans. Basically, you have to be in repayment in order for those payments to count. You can't be like working at RFU like part-time while going to school. That wouldn't count. You have to be like officially in repayment past your 6-month grace period and working full-time for the qualifying employer. Hopefully that answered your question. And then let's see what's next. So what is considered full-time employment? So you do have to meet your employer's definition of full-time. You know, every employer is a little bit different. Sometimes they'll say our full-time requirement is 32 hours for you to get health insurance or whatever. You do have to meet your employer's definition of full-time. If they don't have a full-time definition, then it has to be at least an annual average of 30 hours per week. And and if you are employed at more than one qualifying part-time job at the same time, you may meet the full-time employment requirement if you are working a combined average of at least 30 hours per week with your employer. So it could be like, 15 hours on one, 15 hours on the other, and that will make up your 30 hours in order for you to qualify. So you can basically work 2 jobs and still qualify for PSLF as long as they both qualify. And then vacation or leave time provided by the employer or leave taken for a condition that is qualifying reason for leave under the Family Medical Leave Act of 1993 is equivalent to hours worked in qualifying employment. So if someone leaves for like maternity leave and they get that time off, then that time would count towards PSLF. And then are most hospital clinics considered qualifying employers? Majority of them are, because a lot of them are 501c3, but sometimes there is some private hospitals that don't participate and don't qualify for that. You can also look, there is a way that you can look them up through the IRS. If you just Google like 501c3 IRS search or something like that, it'll give you this like search engine where you can look it up by employer identification number or employer name with city and state. And you can look on there, typically on there, it tells you if the employer is a 501c3. And it says, I am full-time employed in repayment, but pay $0 per month. If you are full-time employed at a qualifying organization and in a qualifying repayment plan, but you pay $0 per month, you do qualify. Those payments should be counting towards PSLF. And then what is a qualifying repayment plan? So qualifying repayment plan is any of the income-driven repayment plans, which include revised pay-as-you-earn, income-based repayment, and income contingent repayment. So those are the 4 income-driven repayment plans, but it also includes the 10-year standard repayment. Usually that's one that people usually don't select, because why would you want to select that plan? Your loans are going to be paid off in 10 years, so there wouldn't be anything left to forgive. So typically they will choose between the 4 income-driven repayment plans, and typically really the first 3. So the most popular ones for PSLF are really the first 2, which is revised pay-as-you-earn or pay-as-you-earn. Those are going to be like your main income-driven repayment plans that you're going to want to select if you're pursuing public service loan forgiveness. Let me see what else is here. So what is a qualifying monthly payment? It's pretty simple. Your qualifying monthly payment just needs to be made on time, which is within 15 days of the due date. And partial payments won't be counted. So you have to make sure you do pay the full amount. So if it's $295.04, don't just pay $295. You have to pay $295.04. It's best to just have your payments be taken out automatically. That way you make sure they are on time and for the amount due. And then right here, it says income-driven reduced or $0 payments do qualify as a full monthly payment. So that is very nice. Typically, a lot of times when you just graduate, you do get a $0 payment for the first year because it goes based off your latest taxes. So you basically get like a year's worth of payments that count towards PSLF by just doing nothing, which is pretty nice. And then you also have to be, of course, employed full-time with a qualifying employer. And keep in mind that neither the qualifying payments nor the employment have to be consecutive. So you could always take a break. If you miss one payment because you were late for whatever reason, you don't restart over again. You just kind of keep going from there. And same thing, you don't have to work consecutively. It could take you like 15 years to get public service loan forgiveness. If you take like a 5-year where you just like, had a baby and like maybe don't want to work or just, whatever, it doesn't have to be like back to back where you're working for these qualifying employers. You can take a break in between and come back to it and kind of pick up where you left off. It is very important to note that voluntary payments made during your grace period don't count towards public service loan forgiveness. So you do have to wait until your grace period is over, or you have to consolidate in order to waive your grace period and start right away. So let's see. I worked as an RN for 5 years at qualifying hospitals. I will now be in grad school for 3 years. When I graduate, will my qualifying payment count start over, or will my prior payments on undergraduate loans still count? Okay, so you can get credit for those 5 years that you worked at a qualifying hospital, as long as you get the paperwork submitted and signed and everything saying that you worked there full time. But if you take out additional loans, right, after you came to school here, basically you still have to do 10 years worth of payments on the loans that you took out at RFU. So in reality, it doesn't really matter too much that you do get credit for those 5 years from before, because you're still going to have to do a total of 10. And since your payments are based on your income and not your loan balance, your payment really is not going to change, your monthly payment, because it's being based on your income. So yes, you do get credit for those 5 years. It doesn't really help, because if you take out additional loans after those 5 years, you still have to do 10 years of payments worth on the new loans. And then how do you rack up interest? Yeah, you do accrue interest during the time that you are pursuing public service loan forgiveness. It doesn't like freeze, the interest doesn't freeze or anything like that. So the only thing that's kind of a little bit concerning with PSLF is that, you know, you kind of have to see if you think you're going to pursue that, you know, kind of like as you know, a 10-year thing, because let's just say you do 8 years and you decide to not do it anymore, you know, you're still going to have all the interest from those 8 years. And, you know, unless you finish up those other 2 years, you're not going to get any forgiveness. It's not like you're going to get like 80% forgiven and then, you know, so it's kind of inconvenient in that sense. But the nice thing is that if you do decide to do it all the way and you do end up doing the 10 years, you do get all of it forgiven and you don't have to pay any taxes. So there's like there's good things about it. There's bad things about it too. Now you can also make lump sum payments that can count towards PSLF. That was a recent change that they did too. So I think prepayments will count for up to 12 months or the next time you're due to recertify for your income-driven repayment plan, whichever is sooner. So it is an option now that you can kind of like take a big payment, pay it for the year, and kind of have that count towards the next 12 months. If you wanted to do that, I know a lot of people don't really do that, so it's not really a big deal. And then during the time that basically we've been under the CARES Act, which started in March 13th of 2020 due to the pandemic, any payments that have been paid during this time where, you know, your payments are zero or they're just not required because of the pandemic, but you were working for a qualifying employer and met the other requirements, all that time is going to count towards PSLF. So basically, you know, a lot of the students that, you know, let's just say the graduates of 2020 are going to get like almost 2 years worth of payments to count towards PSLF. So really they only have to do like 8 more years and then they're done. Okay, so when applying to jobs, how do I know if my potential employer is a non-for-profit tax exempt organization under section 501c3 of the IRS? Yeah, it usually is kind of easy to find, like especially if you use the IRS link, and I'll try to find the link so I can send it to you guys. I'll pull it up towards the end here so you guys can have it, but it usually you can kind of find that information out. Sometimes it's on their website. Sometimes you can just call HR and ask. A lot of times they know if they're 501c3. But I'll send you guys the link so you can see where you can check for that. And then as you guys know, the 0% interest, no payments and all that stuff was extended to May 1st of 2022. So all of this kind of falls under that too, you know, where payments for public service loan forgiveness count, even though you're not technically making payments on them. So you can keep track of public service eligibility by completing the public service application and certification. It's very important that once you do get your hands on this form, you do read it completely, because it kind of explains, you know, all of the requirements for the program. And it also tells you where to send it, which would be to Fed Loan Servicing. Fed Loan Servicing is not going to be the loan servicer that handles PSLF after December of 2022. So it's very important that if you are planning to do the program, you kind of, you know, get started with them, get a form back letting you know how many payments you've made and all of that, but kind of make sure you keep really good records right before they exit so that you don't have any issues when being transferred to the new loan servicer, which probably will be Mohila. But they will be still the loan servicer for PSLF until December of this year. So you just have to make sure that, you know, up to there, as close as possible as you can get it, you get your form signed back and kind of confirming you're in the program and everything. And then you'll kind of just, all of your information should be transferred to the new loan servicer, which will then take over and kind of continue your account towards PSLF after that. It's very important. They suggest that you submit this form at least once a year so that you can kind of make sure that you're on track and everything and your forgiveness can kind of go smoother. It's not something that's like mandatory. So technically, if you never submit the form, you can still go back and do like 10 years worth of, backtracking. But of course, that's going to make your forgiveness take a lot longer. And if you can't get, a certain, if a hospital shuts down or whatever, it's going to be, maybe even impossible to try to get some of these forms signed. So it's very important that you do kind of complete the form every year and stay on top of it and make sure that you're keeping track of like how many qualifying payments you have and that matches up with your records. If Mohila is my current servicer and I graduate this spring, can I stay with them? Yes, but if you are planning to do PSLF, it all kind of depends on what happens with the whole, there's been a lot of changes going on with studentaid.gov. I mean, there could be another possibility that maybe even Fed loan servicing stays another year. They were actually supposed to exit this past December, but then they decided to keep them for an extra year. So I think anything can kind of happen right now during the pandemic, you probably won't be able to stay with Mohila if Fed loan servicing is still handling public service loan forgiveness. What you may want to do is if you graduate this spring, you probably won't get started on repayment anyway until like November or December. So you may just want to wait to just submit your form to probably Mohila, because that's who it'll probably be changed to, maybe like in January or something like that. So let me look to see if the link that this student sent, yeah, this is it right here. The link that the student sent is the search tool for the IRS that you can look. Let me send it to you guys. So you just go to search for tax exempt organizations, and then you can look it up by city, state, country, and name. You can either look it up by employer identification number or organization name. Okay, let me see what other question we have here. So if we initially don't have a qualified employer, but then change to a qualified employer after say a year or so, we can apply at that later time. Yes. Is it just harder to get the form signed? So say for example, you graduate, you don't work for a qualifying employer, but then later on you do end up finding a qualifying employer. You can just get all the paperwork signed by that new qualifying employer and then submit it. I just recommend to just get the form signed as soon as possible, because a lot of times too, what happens if you just don't kind of get the form signed very, on a timely manner, if there is any errors on them counting your qualifying payments, it's going to be hard to identify where the error occurred. Let's just say you're like, oh, I should have 70 payments. And they're telling you, no, you have 60. Where if you're doing 10 years worth of payments, how are you going to know where the error kind of happened? Where if you're submitting it every year, you're going to be like, wait a second, how come I have that I should have 15 payments and you have that I have 10? Then you can it's easier to catch. You don't have to if your loan servicer is not Fed loan servicing and you are going to go into public service loan forgiveness, you automatically get switched to the loan servicer that's handling public service loan forgiveness. So if by the time you submit your paperwork, it's Mohila, then you will get transferred to Mohila automatically. You don't have to do any of that on your own. Typically, they do just have one loan servicer handling the public service loan forgiveness, just to make it easier for everyone to just have one person kind of be in charge of that. Instead of if we had multiple loan servicers, I feel like it would be much more chaotic. So you can find the PSLF certification and application form if you go to studentaid.gov, manage loans, public service loan forgiveness, and then the form is right there. It's the public service loan forgiveness and temporary expanded public service loan forgiveness certification and application. It's a very long name. The important thing to note about the form is that there's a section right on the top of the form that you have to complete. And it says, I request that the U.S. Department of Education determine whether I qualify for PSLF or TE-PSLF and discharge any qualifying loans that I have. And 2, if none of my loans qualify for PSLF or TE-PSLF, when I submit this form, determine how many qualifying payments I have made towards PSLF and TE-PSLF. So basically, when you submit the form and you're just trying to find out like how many qualifying payments you have, you want to make sure you select the first option, which says, I just want to find out how many qualifying payments I have made, or if my employer is a qualified employer. You don't want to say that you qualify for PSLF or TE-PSLF right now, because that would mean you think you now have 120 payments and 10 years have passed and you're trying to apply for forgiveness. So you want to make sure you select that first option until you're actually ready to ask for forgiveness 10 years from when you start. So that's very important. And is there a reason why revised pay-as-you-earn and pay-as-you-earn are the best options for PSLF? I thought you saved more, pay less on student loans within income-based repayment plan. So the reason why repay and pay are the best options for public service loan forgiveness is because those are income-based repayment plans that only take 10% of your discretionary income. Income-based repayment, which is the following plan after that, is going to take 15% of your discretionary income. ICR is going to take 20%, and 10-year standard is going to take, whatever amount you borrowed divided over 10 years. So your payment is super high under that one. So revised pay as you earn or pay as you earn tend to be the one that's going to give you the lowest monthly payment for the 10 years that you have to pay. So that's usually why you want to select either one of those two. The option for selecting between those two really comes down to like, if you're married or not married, that kind of thing. Typically, pay as you earn is the best option if you're going for PSLF, but that might not be the case depending on your marital status. So it kind of just depends. And if you're going to be graduating soon, you are going to get an exit counseling presentation where these things will be talked about more in depth. So you'll kind of understand a little bit more of the difference between pay as you earn and revised pay as you earn. So to make sure I heard you right, the 10-year resets if you choose to go back to school. Basically, it like doesn't reset, but you still are going to have to pay for 10 years on the new loans you take out, because it wouldn't be fair that like, you did 5 years, you come to school, you take out another 100,000, and then you just have to pay on those $100,000 for 5 more years. You basically still have to do 10 years on that 100,000 that you took out extra. So in a way, it kind of does reset it, but you can still get forgiveness for the other ones. Like if you still have 5 more years to get to PSLF for your old loans, you're still going to get those fall off in 5 years, but you're still going to have the other new ones that you took out that you still have to pay for 10 years. So it like doesn't really reset it, but it just, in a way, you just kind of have to think about, if I take out new loans after, having made, qualifying payments, I'm still going to have 10 years on the new loans that I took out. Okay, let me see. Let me try to finish this up so that way whoever needs to leave can leave. I'm sure you guys have heard of PSLF being on the news a lot, and a lot of it has been very negative and like, oh yeah, a lot, like almost everyone gets denied and no one really gets approved. There was a couple reasons for this. Three main reasons. The first one is that before July 1st of 2010, which is when everything kind of switched over to federal direct loans, most of the loans that were actually being made out were FFEL loans. So those loans didn't qualify for PSLF unless they were consolidated into a direct consolidated loan. And if you guys remember, PSLF started in 2007. So in 2007, FFEL loans were still being made in 2008 and 2009. It wasn't until middle of July 2010 when basically the Department of Education said, no more FFEL loans, you're only going to do direct loans. And after that point, your loans kind of automatically became eligible for public service loan forgiveness. So during those first years, students had to take that extra step to consolidate in order to make their loans eligible, which was an issue. Number two, when public service loan forgiveness began in October of 2007, there was actually only one qualifying income-driven repayment plan, which was income contingent repayment, which nobody really uses anymore because it's 20% of your discretionary income. The other income-driven repayment plans were introduced later. IBR came in 2009, Pay-As-You-Earn came in 2012, and revised Pay-As-You-Earn came in 2015. So the best repayment plans really haven't been available since 2012. which is how many years after PSLF started, like 5 or 6 years. So that's another issue too, is just the timing of things when things became available wasn't really all lining up so that you can kind of automatically be eligible and automatically have access to like the best repayment plans. Another reason is the PSLF form that we were just talking about that you have to complete to kind of make sure you're on track and stuff. That didn't really exist until January 2012, which is more than 4 years after public service loan forgiveness began. So a lot of the people that started thinking they were doing the program at first thought they were doing the right thing, but there was no way for anyone to tell them they were doing the wrong thing because there was no form. So a lot of people were kind of just doing the wrong thing and not knowing about it. Another thing is I want to show you guys, because I just did the I want to show you guys the amounts that have been discharged since 2019. As you can see, I looked at all the public service loan forgiveness reports and they started off here. And then you can see how the amounts have like significantly increased, like going from December 2019 to November 2020, it increased like almost 200%. And then going into the latest update that I was able to pull was September 2021. And it actually hit the $1 billion mark right there, which was the last update that we received, that reports that have came out for PSLF. So if you take the increases from December 2019 to September 2021, you can see that it's been a 931% increase for all the amounts that have been discharged since they started reporting in December of 2019. So that's really, really good. And that also doesn't include the 38,000 borrowers that have qualified for forgiveness under the PSLF limited waiver as of mid-December of 2021. So these numbers don't even include like that new waiver that they put in place where a lot of people were basically eligible for forgiveness due to being able to go back and get credit for a lot of their years. Let me see what, I'm gonna get to your guys' questions in a minute. I just kind of want to finish this up. So basically the future of public service loan forgiveness is kind of always, because it was made by Congress, there's no like thing that's going to say like, okay, they can never take it away or anything like that. There's always that chance. But, and you know, there could be changes with this, but there isn't any information right now that says that, you know, that will happen anytime soon. Under this administration, we have no indication that that might happen. So for right now, things should be good. And if they do decide to take it away at some point, what they've done in the past is anytime that they've taken something away, it's been where, you know, the old borrowers get grandfathered in and it only is not available for new borrowers on or after a certain date. So that kind of makes us feel a little better. You can also find that, you know, if you take out a direct loan, public service loan forgiveness is written into your master promissory note. By going to studentaid.gov, and then you can check it there. You can check your master promissory note and the fact that it tells you you can get your loans canceled with public service loan forgiveness if you meet all of the requirements. And then I put the instructions there of how you can get to your master promissory note. So that's basically it. I do want to go back and see what questions you guys had, but if you guys need to go, you can exit. And if not, I'm going to answer the 3 questions that I think I still have left from you guys. Hopefully here quickly. So let's see. The amount discharged means like the amount that has been forgiven so far. So in September of 2021, it finally hit the $1 billion mark. So yeah, it just means the amount that has been discharged so far under public service loan forgiveness. And then do you have to change who your loan servicer is if not Fed loan? You don't have to change it, because if you do decide to go for the program, whoever's handling the public service loan forgiveness program, you will automatically get transferred to them and you will receive new information about, you know, creating a login and all of that stuff. So you don't have to switch. They will automatically basically switch you to whoever it is that you need to be switched to. And then is there any reason you would not qualify for PSLF after 10 years if you meet all the requirements? No, there shouldn't be, because if you meet all of the requirements, and that's why another reason why they typically do grandfather in like old borrowers, because you know, they can't kind of tell you like, hey, you know, this is something that you can do. And then 6 years in say, oh, never mind, we don't feel like offering it anymore, so we're just going to take it away. That's why usually it does become something where like new borrowers wouldn't be eligible to get it. But for you, if you kind of sign up for it, they usually grandfather in old borrowers so that you remain eligible for the program. And usually changes occur when any federal changes occur to like new programs or something like that. It usually is July 1st of when the school year starts. So that's usually what happens. So what happens if you initially qualify, then don't qualify anymore? You have to go back on a standard repayment plan to pay back the principal and accrued interest. You don't have to. You can continue to stay on an income-driven repayment plan, and then possibly look into getting forgiveness under pay-as-you-earn or revised pay-as-you-earn. The only thing with those is that it takes anywhere between 20 to 25 years. So basically double or more than double the time to get your loans forgiven. And you might still have to pay the taxes on the amount forgiven under one of those income-driven repayment plans. Where with PSLF, you don't have to pay the taxes after the 10 years. You just kind of get it forgiven and you can forget about it. So that's kind of the difference. You don't have to switch back to the 10-year standard if like you're not able to afford that. So hopefully you guys learned some stuff. I try to get like the latest information for you guys to show you guys where the numbers are and stuff. I kind of always do that when I do this presentation. And then can you get qualified again to get to the 120 payments? Yeah, so just because maybe you take a break from PSLF and say, for example, you want to go back into it, you can kind of like stop and then start up again. You know, just because you work for a private sector employer or something for a couple of years doesn't mean that you're disqualified and can't do it anymore. You just kind of have to pick up where you left off and continue to submit the form and everything until you reach those 10 years. So technically it could take you like, 15, 17 years to get public service loan forgiveness if you had to kind of work for employers that didn't qualify in the meantime, sometime in between that time. But yeah, you can get qualified again to get to the 120 payments, even if it takes you longer than 10 years. There's no, there's no deadline to get to the 120 payments. It doesn't have to be done by like, year 18 or anything like that. All right, guys. I'm still here if you guys have any questions, and if not, enjoy the rest of your day and let us know if you guys have any questions. We will save the recording and upload it to the Google website. And I hope you guys have a really good day.